All right, welcome back. So today what I want to do is have a look at accessing database information, but this time we don't have to necessarily just use information or databases that have been provided to us. We can use databases for a whole bunch of stuff, including setting up our own. So what I want to do here is to kind of get with an app, I want to get a login screen. So I want to allow only people who are authenticated users who are supposed to be using my app to be able to access a different page in my app. Or later on, we could take this and have a username when you log in, you only get your information rather than everybody's information. So this is exactly kind of how it works for when you log into your Gmail or your SD61 Learn account, or when you go buy something on Amazon, you want to log in and you want only your information to be available to you and no one else to be able to access your information. So let's start out with the basics, just kind of looking at how we can create this authentication screen. So I'm going to set up, first of all, a little design here. I'm going to call this the login screen. And what do I want here? So I'm going to have actually, I think, three screens here. There's a login screen, and if I log in properly, then I will be able to get to the super secret screen. And if I log in improperly, like I have the wrong username or password, then I get to a rejected screen. So just to start off, I'm going to kind of set that up. And this is a great thing to do when you're doing an app design. Just quickly sketch out all of the different screens or pages that you anticipate, because it's going to make life easier kind of as we go along. So I'm going to make another screen here. I'll call this the super secret. I'll just call it secret screen. And I am going to, let's just start off with having a picture here, and we'll give it a little bit of I'll just use an icon here. And if you get in, oh, thumbs up right there. Perfect. Grab the thumbs up. That means we have been authenticated, and I'm going to set another new screen, and there I will call this the reject screen. And in this case, I'll throw another picture on there just to say, hey, you are not welcome here. I think there was a thumbs down. There we go, thumbs down screen as well. Perfect. Now I can go back to my login screen. Login screen will just have to say here, I don't know, we'll call this just title, and we'll say welcome. Please log in to access the secret. There we go. Drag that over here. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Again, you can later on spend some time, make it look pretty, but let's just go quick here. So what I'm going to grab here is I need a login, and pretty standard. We have a label here, which will have something like the username. And we've got another feature we haven't done yet. This is a text input. It's a really handy one. I'm going to pop that next to it. This allows users to be able to type in information. So if you wanted to get their username or password or submit something, that's what you put it here. And I will call this the UN input. And I'm going to do the same thing for a password. Drag that over here. Let's call that password. And grab a text input as well. And I will call that, what did I call this? UN input. Then I guess I will call this the password input. Perfect. And usually we type the two in here and then we hit some kind of button. So let's do a submit button here. Submit. And I will just also call that submit. Perfect. All right, so the idea here is I'm going to type in a username and password, hit submit. If it works, I'm going to get into the secret screen. If it does not work, I'm going to get to go to the rejected screen. Now I have to figure out who is allowed into my secret room or my secret screen here. And to do that, we're going to set up a database. So I'm going to go over to data here. Now, in the past, we have added one of all of these many different things, but in this case, I'm going to create my own table to have information here, and I will just call this table users. So over here, we can add our own, and up comes a little setup where we can create our own data, our own database here. So I am going to notice we have by default an ID. This will be our primary key so that each user will have a unique number. Then they're going to have a username. So I'm going to put that up here. And we can add another key or another column. And in this case, we're going to put their password. And you can continue going on here. You could have a first name, last name. You could have a whole bunch of stuff. This is just all of the information or data about your users. In this case, I am going to just manually enter it in, but you can also import data from other tables if you wish using this import CSV. You can send this information out if you need for using in other things. And here we're just going to type it in. We can also get our app later on to register new users into our database if we want, but let's worry about that a little bit later. In this case, I'm just going to create a couple users. Let's do a layered with a lowercase there. Password is super secret password. And then I can add a, oh, that's a great point here. I'm going to add a row. Notice that I got an error up here. Value must be Boolean, number, string, undefined, or null. Make sure to include quotes for strings like this. So they're helping me out a little bit here. Remember, in our programming, whenever we put in a word that's not a word in JavaScript or Python or any other language, and it doesn't know what it is, it's going to assume that that's a variable. So in this case, I can't store variables in the table. I need to store data or information, and in this case, I need to store my name as a string. So I got to make sure we put the quotes around here and quotes around here like that. You can set up what kind of information goes into each column. With be a string, a number, or a Boolean. So if you were to wanted just information like numbers, we wouldn't have to put the quotes around it, but you would want to make sure that this was a number. They may be happy with that. If here, let's just see. Oh no, I want to undo that. Can I? Oh, I can delete the column. Let's see. Can I put 55 in and then add row? Yes, that would be happy with that. So I don't have to do it. It's going to automatically figure out that it's an integer here or a number. Delete that one. All right. So here we go. We've got our first user. User number 1 is layered, and his password is super secret. Now, just so I have a couple options, I'm going to try this. I'm going to say we'll make a guest account. Oh, don't forget in quotation marks here. And we will also say also secret is their password in quotation marks. And we're going to add that row. So my user database or user table here now has 2 users, layered, and there's the password, and guest, and also the password. So we've got our framework here. We've got our data. Now we just need to make it work and see what happens. So let's get into some coding here. First thing I'm going to look at is just grabbing this information when I submit it. So I'm going to hit that on event. When I click the submit button, something is going to happen. And what I need to do is I need to grab whatever the user has typed in here, and I need to go see if it's in the database. I need to go find it. And previously we've done this. In other things, we need to create a JavaScript object, remember, in order to compare information from the app into the database. So I am going to grab the user or the username here, and I'm going to just set that up so I can compare it later on. And remember, we make a JavaScript object here down with this var object. So I'm going to grab that here, and I will call it, let's just call it user. The key is what I'm going to be looking up, and I think I called that username. Yes, username, all lowercase. So that's username is the key that I'm going to use. I'm going to be looking up in the database, and the value is whatever they typed in there. So I can actually, under my UI controls, I can just grab the text from here, which is kind of handy, using the get text. There we go. Notice you also have a get number, so use it appropriately depending if you're punching in like a phone number or an amount, or in this case, I do want it as a string, so I want this to get text from, I said this was called user UN input. Perfect. So now that I have that as a JavaScript object, think of it like just a box with labeled user, and in it is username and whatever they typed in. I can now go and look that up and see if it is in the database. So for that, we're going to use that read records option that we got. It's really big, and we can delete some of it, but it's nice to have that framework. You don't have to remember everything. So I'm going to read records from my table. The table was called users. Users, yes. Type that in again. And I'm gonna keep the for loop, but I'm gonna get rid of that console.log just because it's unnecessary. It just shows us everything in here. So I'm gonna read records from users, and remember we also looked at changing this. This is an optional parameter. If we leave this as a blank object, it's gonna go through the entire database and find everything. But we can also replace it with another object, and it's gonna search for that object in the database. So I'm going to get rid of that. And the object I'm going to look for is users, or user, sorry. So I want to only find the thing that they typed in there. Now, they may be in there or they may not be in there. So let's just, let's do a little, I'm going to keep this here for now. We're going to have a couple options here. So either the username that I typed in here is in the database, in which case we can move on to the next step, or it's not in the database at all. They just put in a random name and we haven't found it. And it might be nice right at the beginning to figure out if that part is working. So we can throw this in for both our own programming purposes and also for communicating to the users. It'd be nice for them to know, nope, there's no username like that. So I'm going to use a if-else statement here. Drag that in here. This for loop we'll use a little bit later, but I'm just going to leave it here. It shouldn't cause us any problems at the moment. So the read records is going to find every record that matches that description, that JavaScript object that we put in there. And it's going to give us back all of them. So you could have options where there were multiple usernames. Hopefully that's not the case, that are the same. But it'll give us all of them back, or it'll give us the one back that we want, or it'll give us 0 back. So what would be nice to know is, did we find that user? And so what we can do is use that idea of the records dot length. If it is greater than 0, which means at least one of the records matched that username. If that's the case, let's figure out just to see if this is working. I'm just going to throw a little temporary console log message in there. I will say a user was found. Else, I'm going to say no such users. We're not worrying about the password or anything like that. We just want to see, can we look up something that a user has typed in there from the database? And let's just run that. That should hopefully tell us either yes, we found somebody, or no, we didn't. So I'm going to put in Bob. There's no Bob in here, and if I hit submit, I get a no such users. Handy. And I'm going to put in a layered and hit submit, and a user was found. Beautiful. So it's working so far. So I'm going to just keep this here. just to remind me what's happening. But let's say now that there was no such user. Well, I might want to get rid of that and say, well, if they hit that submit button and they've put in a completely wrong username, well, they get rejected. So I'm going to say set screen to the reject screen. So immediately, just send them away. Now, this is not the best user experience. Perhaps it'd be nice to give them some more information, like either, oh, your password is incorrect, or there's no such user, or something like that. We could start developing multiple screens or other ways of giving feedback for that if you like, but let's keep it simple for now. So that means we're gone. In this case, a user was found. So we found a user. We now need to go and make sure that the password that they put in matches the password for that user. And this is where we're going to use that for loop. So I'm going to get rid of that for now. Bring this up here and say, okay, now I need to go through and I need to find some of that information. So I want to see if the password that came back was correct. And what I could do here is, let's just test and see what comes back. I'm going to hit the console log. And let's just log the record at I. Let's get all of that information. I want to see it down here just to see what comes back. So let's reset that and run. And I am going to put in Laird, because that's somebody there, and I just hit submit for now. And oh, look what I get back there. Laird is the username, password is super secret, ID is 1. So it's grabbed me. And if let's just double check this to make sure it doesn't happen for other things. What if I put Bob or Bobo in here? Oh, nothing gets logged and I get sent to the reject screen. So perfect. So let's now do something with that. So I want to know, now that I've matched up the username, I know what the password is in the database. I want to know if the password in the database matches the password they typed in here. So I am going to throw another if statement here. Let's do an if else as well, because I'm going to also get rid of them if it doesn't. You can always fix this later on with the little plus or minus by adding an if or an if else. So my first thing I want to know is, yes, the user's there. Did the password they type in match the password in the record? So I can say if the records at I period, and what was my title there? I think it was called password. Not records is equal to or matches the thing that is in the password input. So I can do the drag and drop here if I want, but since I started typing, I'm just going to use this as my model. I'm going to say get text from password input. Just like that. If you feel more comfortable doing the drag and drop, then do the drag and drop there, but you'll see if I click off here, it'll make it for me. Perfect. So if the record that just was returned and the password part of that is equal to whatever I typed in here, well, let's not do the console log. Let's just say, yes, you're in. You should be happy. So I am going to set screen to the secret screen. Now, if the password that they typed in does not match the password that's in the database, well, that means they got their password wrong. So unfortunately, you get the big old thumbs down reject screen. And that's getting a little more complicated, you can see, with a lot of nested if-then statements, but hopefully this works. So let's run that and let's see here. So if I put in Bob, Well, let's first of all, let's make it work. I put in layered, and its password is super secret, and I submit. I get the good old thumbs up. Excellent. Let's try that again. Now let's put the correct username in here, but I put in secret, and I get the old thumbs down. Beautiful. Make sure you try all combinations here. What if I put in Bob, and I put in Bob's password is super secret? Nothing. What if I put in just layered and I leave the password blank? Still get a thumbs down. And if I remember, I also have a user called guest. Let's test that one out. And their password was also secret. And I get a thumbs up. And you have just created yourself a nice little login screen authentication to make sure that only users from your database are allowed into the next step. Now, a little bit later, or the grade 12s may want to start to think, is there ways of hacking this or breaking this system or getting around it? And you may find there are, but we can talk a little bit more about that in class and ways that we can ensure that nobody can get to our super secret screen unless they are actually in that database. So go ahead, I want you to build one yourself and put some kind of secret, and you'll see later on that we'll start to be able to even grab data from each of those users and have their real secret data displayed.